So this is the third video I'm recording on my new phone, and like I still haven't figured out like the quality, because the first one was too wide. It really, I mean, but when I checked the video later, like it looks okay. So I don't know what happened. And the second one, it was better, but it was also, I'm gonna click here. This hopefully is gonna do something. But it wasn't like as light, but it was kind of yellow. So there's that. But yeah, let's see if like this time around like this works out. But yeah, so basically what I want to talk about today is my head. Is always about my head, about how I'm doing and all that. But it's just that yesterday when I was going to bed, I kind of like let me think everything that I had to think. So instead of like suppressing my thoughts or like anything that was coming out, I was like, I'll just say it. You're insecure about this, just say it. I was gonna say out loud. It wasn't really out loud. It was just like in my head. But like it was a very therapeutic experience for me, and I think that is something that I need to do more, because basically like this past couple of days, yesterday was better than the days before. Like I was struggling a lot to kind of like do things. I was struggling with concentration, so I kind of have to, it's kind of like hoping that so but what I found out is that by kind of like being super honest with myself and with what I was doing, like it led to me kind of all the projections, the compensation mechanisms, like everything that was happening, it kind of like ended up fading to the background when I was being fully honest with myself. And this always started when I was kind of like thinking about my insecurities, because there are some things that I'm secure about that I'm a little bit more honest about that. I kind of like, I don't have as many issues, but there's some stuff that I kind of I struggled a little bit with that. So for example, something that I'm kind of like okay admitting is that I don't like it when I'm not in control. Like I don't like when that feeling that I have. It really destabilizes me when I feel like I'm not really in control of the situation. So that is something that I'm secure about. But that is something that like I'm very open about. So I usually like whenever I'm recording these videos, I'm talking about myself, and that includes that. So what I want is for me to include the things that I usually would try to stay away, because I'm like embarrassed about the fact that that is something I'm insecure about. So for example, one thing that yesterday I was kind of like reflecting, it was just like the fact that I, generally speaking, when I think about my life experience and the things that I've done, I didn't really have that many possibilities, that many openings for me to just really kind of like impose myself, for me to become, like in an unhealthy way, not just like imposing myself, like in a, I'm just establishing myself, but like also kind of like treating other people down. So that was, something that I was very, I kind of like realized like, oh yeah, like sometimes I embellish the truth, embellish what has happened in the past, so I can kind of like feel like that is, me, that, I'm kind of like this dominant person. But, it's not that I have been the opposite of that, it's just that I haven't really had the opportunities, like usually, which is kind of like a good thing. It's good that like I've been able to kind of like just exist without having to kind of like, like getting to having this conflict. I think that ultimately like this is my biggest challenge, because on one hand I kind of like want my experience to kind of like represent something different. I wish that I look back and I have the examples of me kind of like being on top, being in control and all that, and that's not really the reality. And but at the same time, like it's not like it's the opposite of that. It's just that things have been pretty chill, for me. I've been able to kind of like just go through life smoothly without having many conflicts, many confrontations, and that is a good thing. That's basically that. Like that is a good thing. Let me get my water bottle. Okay. And like as I said, like that's a good thing. I have to kind of like internalize this fact that like it's okay, because I feel like I'm insecure. I feel insecure about something, so I start looking back at my life, trying to find, like a situation in which I can be like, oh, look at this, I'm imposing myself here, I am really, like doing the thing being me, kind of like being, kind of like in control, as I said, top dog. That I don't know if like this is applies, but it's pretty much that. It's just like me looking at myself and feeling like my reality does not really exemplify the version of myself that I think I am representing. And as I said, like this kind of like there are other insecurities, and this fits into like even more insecurities. And yeah, so I don't know, like I'm still embarrassed. This is why I'm not giving like too many details. I'm not saying specific things, But it's the point I'm trying to make is that a lot of the things that I'm kind of like that I cringe at, or that I'm kind of like no thanks, it is like that because I wish that I could, do that. I could say that, because if I did, then it's basically like kind of like me wanting to be a person who I'm not. And it's kind of hard because on one hand I'm trying like not to crave that, but on the other I am I don't know how to stop wanting to be that person. Sometimes when I'm writing, like I have a good situation in that I'm just myself and I'm feeling myself, but yeah, the rest of the time I kind of create the scenarios in my head. I kind of like have these fantasies where I can kind of like be that person, and I don't really know what to do about it. I don't really know how to properly, how to fix the situation. But it is kind of like, I mean, it's worth examining, even if I don't come across any solution, because I don't know, like the point is that like I was breaking down things yesterday and I was like, there's so many insecurities that I have and I'm so done. I don't really want to have insecurities anymore. I want to be, a self-sufficient person who doesn't really need external validation of any sort. I know that this is kind of like maybe unrealistic for me to expect because that's just how life works. Like we're social beings, so of course like we're going to crave interactions of some sort. But I can't crave interactions without kind of like trying to hold myself to a certain standard that isn't healthy and isn't good for me and that isn't realistic, because I think like that's the biggest thing, like something not being good for you, like it is a very good justification of like you existing the way you do, but I know I think that something not being realistic, it's easier for you to kind of like reject that, so I kind of like want to exist in this at this spot where I don't care about what people think, but I haven't really let myself go, because that is something that has happened in the past. Like when I stopped caring, it's because I'm numbed, because I'm going through like an episode, so I don't want that. But there is like a healthy way for me to be like that, a way in which I don't care, because that's ultimately like all I need to not care about the way I'm perceived, about who I am, but at the same time, but not in a kind of like I'm kind of like letting myself go, as I said, like I'm still care, still kind of like conscious about who I am as a person, what I'm doing, what I stand for, all that. But it doesn't really matter what like what the people say. And it's interesting because like I don't even have like a specific person or group of people that I'm like like, oh, this I'm craving. It's kind of like this empty, not empty, but this convoluted mess of it's kind of like you have like some people, they're kind of like they're voicing those things and they're not really real people, they're just kind of like my insecurities personified. So yeah, so it's kind of I have to kind of like settle with myself before I can kind of have any other situation going on. But yeah, yesterday it was good. I felt really good when I was just like naming the things that made me feel kind of like bad. And for a second there, like I really felt like I no longer cared. It really felt like I had like those like insecurities go, but then time passes and I'm back to kind of like being secure about that. I think that a way that this really shows itself is when I have fantasies about my life, about where I'm at, where I'll go, and I'm trying my best like not to have those, because the only fantasies I want to have are from like the stories I'm telling, but like the fact that they are there, it just shows that there is an element of part of me that is not really well adjusted yet. Like I'm still kind of like paying attention to what could be, and what could have been, and what wasn't, because as I said, like I don't want to get stuck on the things that didn't happen, because it's kind of pointless. Like you learn from your experiences and you move on. That's pretty much what I want. But sometimes like like this moving on involves like not only like what's happening like IRL, but also what's happening in your head regarding your fantasies. So it is one of those things that I don't really know how to fix that. Like I just know that every I really want to be on top of things and on top of people, and whenever I'm not, I really feel kind of like vulnerable. I feel like it isn't as if in my head, like if I'm not this, I'm inherently this, but like there's a whole spectrum of like what could have been, and usually I'm more like here in the middle. But my head, I'm like, oh, if I'm not here, I'm here. So I get very insecure about it, and suddenly I'm kind of like compensating for things. I'm trying to impose myself in a certain way, and that isn't really helpful. It doesn't really kind of like work on the long run, because I'm creating these situations where I can be that person, but like regardless of what you think, about who you are, uh, that is like kind of like reality, and there is your expectations. And there's nothing wrong with having expectations for yourself, but if they kind of like they go unbridled, you end up kind of like losing touch with reality, because ultimately that's, I think, what I need to be kind of like um, I need to be in touch with who I am. Not the version that my fantasies create, but just who I am. And who I am is not really that person. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I know, because I know that this goes back to trauma that I have. Like this kind of like idea that, if things had happened, a little differently, I would have been, like things wouldn't have hurt me. And even though I think that I'm kind of like over that, I still find myself kind of one way or another going back to a reality in my head where I'm kind of like trying to speak over what really happened, which means that I'm not 100% like healed. There's still things for me to like pay attention to, and I don't know how to stop it. Basically, that's kind of like what yesterday was all about. Me realizing, like, oh yeah, like this is what exactly do I do? I know what I don't want to happen, but I can prevent that from happening, and it makes you feel kind of shitty. Like there's nothing you can do, and there's definitely something you can do. Like there's kind of like just how things work, but like there is I don't know, something. Sorry, I just because this morning I went out, like I sold two things, so I had two packages both, and then I went to some supermarkets doing like my thing, and there was like this, I was drinking something, and I was like, okay, what did I do with like that can? But I think I think I already posted, because I go there and I have these cans and these cartons and like stuff that is like metal, plastic, or whatever. I put in this place to kind of like recycle, and yeah, so there's that. And I was kind of like, oh my god, did I put that? So that kind of like came to mind. But yeah, but I'm pretty sure I recycled it, so that's good for me. I don't know, I'm really happy, this month. I think that, regarding like my expenses, like I still kind of like have been able to enjoy myself and to indulge myself a little bit, but it was just, today was another day that like I did that. But for the most part, I haven't really been doing that, so I think I'm gonna have some money, it's like I'm gonna have like a good amount of money for me to invest, which is pretty much what I'm trying to do. And I don't know, it's kind of interesting because like it's going back to what I was saying before. It's like every little thing, instead of like just passing by, like my brain signifies it. Like it is really adding certain layer and trying to kind of like frame it into like the narrative that I'm, true narrative that I have, and everything is. I know everything could be going great, and yet my mind would not be enough for me, for my mind. I still feel insecure about something, and I'm tired. I don't want to feel insecure anymore. I don't want to trying to keep up pretenses, like I don't want to have any affectations anymore. I just want to be myself without any weight, like me trying to be something, or regardless of what it is, because that's kind of how my life has been going on so far. I create these scenarios in my head, as I said, and they exist to make me to make me kind of like fit into this mold. I wish I could just exist. I could just live my life, and those things wouldn't haunt me, but they do. I think there are definitely moments where I'm kind of like living my best life when that doesn't happen. So when I'm writing, that's a good example. When I do my supermarket tour, like that's another example of when I'm just being myself and I'm just enjoying myself, and enjoying the moment, because ultimately it's about that. Because sometimes like like you just have, there's so much in your head that you lose track of what's happening in the present, and then instead of enjoying yourself, you are kind of like living in this sideline, like in this parallel reality that isn't really the case. And it's interesting because like what I'm fantasizing about, it changes, but the bottom line of whatever is happening is always the same. And as I said, like it has to do with like me not feeling, or me feeling secure about what, about my competence, about my intelligence. Like I do feel, I fear sometimes that I don't really have it. I've been trying to kind of like affirm myself in the fact that I'm writing, because that is something that requires a level of intelligence, and I'm doing it. So like I want to kind of embrace that. I want to affirm to myself that I am competent, I am smart, like I can do things. I'm not, because I think lately I've been like very much kind of like saying that I'm a loser. I don't really mean it in a bad way, but like that's not really something good for you to affirm to yourself. I mean, when I say that, it's just that I don't know, I've never really been particularly popular, and I spent, for example, a lot of time when I was in high school just in my own head, and that got in the way of me enjoying what was happening like in life. And it is interesting that I don't regret anything. Like I look back and I'm like, yeah, this happened, this could happen, but I don't really regret anything. I'm just like, this. And I think that is like the best way to live, basically. Like as you yeah, it's you kind of like just learning from your mistakes, not making the same mistake twice. But it is, I don't know, like, but I look back and I'm like, okay, I had an idea, I had a notion of who I wanted to be or what I wanted to accomplish, and that kind of like, I got carried away, basically, because I really wanted like that reality to be true, and I forsook everything else. So that is something that I don't want to, that's a mistake I don't want to make again. So like next month, which is already next week, I'm going to start a new major. I'm going to start a new college, and it's going to be a brand new experience, and I want to enjoy myself. Like I'm there to study, and of course I'm going to be thinking about work. I'm going to be invested, I'm going to be doing things, but basically like I still want to enjoy the moment. So like there's so many different activities that happen at college, and I, for example, like my last because I've studied in 4 different colleges so far, and I never like engage with anything. I'm not saying that like right now is going to be the time, like that's not really what I don't know, like I just want to I just want to maybe interact. Maybe I'm gonna make friends. Like I'm kind of like out there and happy and thinking about making friends, which is something that has never really happened before. In all the different colleges I've been at, all the different courses, all and everything. Like I was very much kind of like I wasn't against it, but I wasn't really looking for it. And right now, I'm like, no, like if that opportunity comes up, I'm not gonna shut it down. Because ultimately, experiences is like they are what life is all about. Like they are like there's some of the things that keep you going. So I'm very much invested in trying new things, and yeah, basically that. So it's going to be a new stage in my life, and I'm excited about what is going to bring, like what's going to happen. But once again, like I have to respect my limits. So I'm going to, because there is like a fine line between you pushing yourself to do something you're not, that's out of your comfort zone, and like you just really kind of like almost traumatizing yourself. So I don't want that. I don't want like this is supposed to be a good experience. So I don't want like negative things to. Oh yeah, I already received the email of where like my classes and all that, so I have to look at it, and I will once I'm done with this. But what I'm trying to say is that I'm so insecure about so many things about myself, and I'm tired of that. I don't want to feel insecure anymore. Like that is not good for me. That is not like that's not like the headspace I want to be in. And I don't really know how to solve this, because knowing it is kind of like half the battle, but like what's the rest of the battle? Like what do I do next, now that I have kind of like come to accept that I'm insecure about some things, and that like that it's not just something that is happening that doesn't affect me. Like these insecurities, they're kind of like the reason why I have like these delusions, and I'm done with delusions. I don't want to have them anymore. And actually, like if I get manic, like that is going to happen, and when depressed as well. But like let's save this delusions for like those situations, when I'm like stable, normal. Like I don't want to think that way. I don't want to be that way. So that is a so that's basically where my head is at right now. It's just like trying to live my best life, but not only in a way of like me enjoying myself in the activities I'm doing, but like me being at peace with myself, with my brain. That is, like something that is kind of like really relevant for me to it's going to be very relevant for me moving on. It has always been relevant, and like I have made a lot of progress. There's been several situations in which there are many insecurities that I used to have that I don't have anymore. So like this is possible, it's doable. I can I can improve this way, but I don't know. I'm just very concerned about, because I really feel that if I don't fix this, like I'm going to kind of like keep running in circles, like regarding something. So like I really want to improve, and like my life is just going to be better in itself if I'm no longer kind of like guided by insecurities and fears. Because also like when thinking about fears, it's like there are some things that like I generally do fear, and they're not particularly scary, but I think is that like when you kind of when I try to just suppress those situations, I end up kind of like just making making things even worse. It's kind of like the whole thing of sand, right? So like the more you try to hold sand, the more it kind of like falls from your fears. So there's that. But like I have so many good examples. Some of them like from like this week or last week, where like I kind of like allow myself to think the thing that I was insecure about, and then just by doing that, I kind of like the fear lost its power, and that is pretty good. That was like that made me really happy, because the thing about fears is that like you keep existing, so there's always going to be new things, but you can tie them down to kind of like a bunch of kind of like a handful of different things. So it's good that like for me at least it was my very positive experience for me to just look at things that would have made me feel insecure in the past and realize like, okay, this is no longer something that I'm secure about. This is not something that I'm scared of. But there's always something that you can do, something that you can so yeah, I was gonna say there's something you can say, but I think like all my demons, they're pretty much internal. So like just saying who I'm saying this to, maybe if I say something to my therapist, it's going to be a little different. But like as of right now, like it is, I don't know, it is what it is, and there's nothing wrong with like the way that things are, but things can be better. I think that's the mentality you have to have, instead of like looking at something and being like, I'm not going to be whole until like I figure this out. Just thinking about like, I'm whole right now, I just need to like when I figure this out, like my life is going to be better. I'm going to be more fulfilled, I'm going to be happier, and that's kind of like, and that is worth it, basically. Like, oh, I'm gonna do this thing and it's going to improve my happiness by just like a little bit. Like that is enough. That is relevant. That's good enough for to justify change. Because I think sometimes like we get very lethargic. Things was like, okay, I'm gonna fix this and that's going to improve my life a little bit, but like that's not enough. But like no, every little bit that you can improve, like that is good enough. And that's basically how like my mindset right now, that whatever it is that I can do to make things easier for me, I'm doing it, because life is hard enough. So if you can make something lighter, because maybe easier is not necessarily the right word, it's just like lighter, like that is no, it is good enough, it is huge. I think that I should congratulate myself in these kind of like changes, because I don't know, sometimes like the smallest things, like they make a difference, when you're kind of like dealing with something. So yeah, it's also like small things, like they ended up piling up. So like if you improve one thing here, another thing there, something else elsewhere, like you end up being like very yeah, like it makes a difference. Things end up being lighter, as I said. Also, I can think like meeting yourself where you're at, like that's important. So for example, especially days I've been struggling with myself to kind of like getting things done and like working on my novel and all of that, and yesterday was better and today is going to be even better, I'm hoping. But it is something to kind of like pay attention to, because kind of lost my train of thought. Okay, so I think I'm gonna wrap this up right now. Life is good, but it can always be better, and just being better doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, but it means that it'll be easier, for you to handle and that is worth it. You know, like anything that you can do to improve yourself is, you know, like is a worthy effort for you to make. So anyways,